Hi, in today's Bitwig episode we're going to look at how you can speed up your workflow in Bitwig Studio using custom templates. Creating a template can save you tons of hours because many times signal chains and effect chains may look the same from project to project, and then it can be really great to set this up once and then you can use these templates when you create new projects. Okay, so to begin with, a template is basically a starting point here in our application, and a music template may contain like send effects, might contain a mastering chain or at least a peak limiter on the master channel, and depending on what kind of music you make, it might also contain a bass, a drum kit, a keyboard or a piano. So we have this starting point of typical instruments that we use or might use from project to project. So let's get started here on our template, and then we're going to save this template as our default template in Bitwig, so it will load each time we create a new project. So first we go to the master channel, and we're going to add a peak limiter. At least that's what I always have on my master channel. And we set the ceiling here to minus 0.5 dB, and we might also increase the input gain here, depending on how we set the channels later on, but for now we're going to leave the input gain at 0 dB. Okay, so a peak limiter, like the name suggests, will limit the volume peaks, so you never exceed 0 dB or the threshold that you set in the application. It's crucial that we never exceed 0 dB when we export our 16-bit or 24-bit masters or mixes, because you don't want to enter into a digital distortion, because it's gonna mess up your sound badly. In my work, I often set the limit threshold to minus 0.5 dB or minus 1 dB, depending on what kind of platform I'm exporting to. But it's important that you have that limiter on your master bus. Next, after the peak limiter, I often add some kind of loudness measuring plugin or metering plugin. And I do recommend that you go ahead and download Ulean loudness meter. So we're going to search for Ulean. So Ulean is not a native plugin or native device that comes with Bitwig Studio. You have to download this. It's a third-party plugin. But you'll find the link in the description. The Ulean loudness meter 2 here will let us measure the perceived loudness of our music and actually see the loudness in numbers and the peak levels, etc. So it's a really good application to see exactly how loud your music will be perceived. So in short, we just need two devices or two plugins here on the master channel to limit the peaks of the music and also measure the loudness of the music. And of course, we're going to add and replace some of these plugins later on when we create our real mastering for the project. But this is really great to have in a template. Okay, so if you like these videos and want to learn more Bitwig Studio in depth and from the foundation, maybe you're a Bitwig beginner or coming from another DAW, I highly recommend you join my Bitwig Studio masterclass at edu.morningdewmedia.com. It's a very thorough course and you learn everything you need to know to create great music in Bitwig Studio. When we're done with the master channel, we head over to the send effects. So let's go to effect 1 and we're gonna press B key and we're gonna add some kind of reverb as our send effects number 1. And you can of course use the internal reverb of Bitwig Studio as your main reverb, but I like to use some third-party reverbs. So I'm gonna add Valhalla Room as my main send reverb 1. And we can leave it at the basic settings there, but it's important to have a 100% mix if you're using send effects, or else you will get more amplitude overall when you start to send the signal to the send effects. So make sure you have the mix at 100%. Next up, we're going to add a second effects, so add effects track. Right click and select add effects track, or we can press Command Alt and T to add a second effect track. And on that one, we're going to add some kind of delay. And I like to use delay plus and in ping pong mode. Also make sure this has 100% effects in. Okay, so we have a master channel set up, we have some send effects set up. Now what more do we need here for our template? Maybe some instrument tracks. So let's add some drums, let's add maybe a piano or some keyboard instrument, and also a bass. So let's head up to our first instrument track in the project, and we're gonna add some kind of piano. And yeah, you can search piano and maybe find some pianos that comes with the Bitwig Studio bundle, but I think I'll add something from the contact sampler. So I'm gonna add the contact sampler and add one of my favorite pianos, the Gentleman here, as the main piano. Yeah, so it's a really beautiful piano. So there we have our piano instrument, and we also want to name this track. So press Command R and name this piano. We can press Command T, add another instrument track, and there we're gonna put the bass. Let's just start for bass and see what we can find. So that's a layered sound with the piano, but yeah. Okay, so the piano, bass, and now maybe some drums. And we can either like add a drum kit, a drum machine, which will contain a whole drum kit. So let's press Command T, add another instrument track. And we're gonna press Command R and rename that to drums. And also make sure that we record on this track. So what we play here will be on the drum kit, and we can start for, go to the drum machine. And you can click this little arrow, which will give you access to the presets for the drum machine. And let's add a V8 drum kit, which is a really nice like starter kit. And we're also going to prepare a few different audio tracks here for this template. So press Command Shift T and add 4 audio tracks. And we'll also rename this track properly, so we have audio 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, depending on what kind of audio interface you have, if you have an interface with many inputs and outputs, you might want to change how the inputs are routed on these tracks, so they are like pre-set up with the correct inputs. But for now, we can have this set to a stereo input 1/2, because I often record like external keyboards or stereo keyboards into the inputs here. But you could also, of course, go into the audio inputs and change this to input 1 and set the second one to input 2, input 3, and input 4 then, and so forth. So you have this like a predefined setup. And you can, of course, also rename this if you're often like recording synths to this track, and you're recording like guitar left or guitar right on this one, and then maybe you record something else on this one, maybe shakers. Right, so pressing tab here will bring us to the mixer, and we can see all the different tracks we have for our arrangement here. And if you want to expand the drum track and see all the individual outputs, you can just press this little icon up here at the drum track. We can see the individual tracks. If you want to process these differently or separately, the different drum tracks. So that's basically how we set up our template. And now we just need to save this as a template. So we go to File, Save as Template, and we give this a name, my default template. And we're going to press OK. And that will save our product template. Now the next step, if we want to use this template as our starting template when we create new products, we need to do an additional step here. So go into the dashboard, click this little Bitwig icon in the middle, and go to Settings, Behavior, and there you have Template. Use a template for a new products. Just click that one, and we can select this new template, my default template. So closing the dashboard and go to File and press New Product, and bam, there we have the product template. So we instantly have a template here to go with just to record some stuff. Okay, so that's how we create a bass template in Bitwig Studio, and it will save us a ton of time because we don't have to do this like rudimentary setups each time we create a new track. We can just begin, and we have our instruments, we have some sound effects, and we have a bass mastering chain, and it'll just save us a ton of time. Aside from that, if you want to support the channel and also get some behind the scenes footage, you can join me at patreon.com/Gelheim. It's a subscription, but it's like $2, and all the help I can get here on the channel really helps drive things forward. Okay, thanks for watching today. My name is Mattias. Any comments or questions, leave them in the comment section. See you in the next video. Bye!